Silence of the Heart, Robert Adams, Chapter 13. God as the world. God as the world is real. When you are without thoughts, when you are without needs, without wants, without desires, then you are God. You are the universe. You are divine love. You are beauty. The world by itself is an illusion, but God as the world is real. What is God. A devotee of Ramana Maharishi, who had been with him for about 25 years, had a son that died, and he was grief-stricken. So he begged to have an audience with Ramana. Now Ramana rests from 12 to 2. He agreed to see his devotee. When the devotee entered the hall, Ramana was reclining on his couch with his eyes closed, and the devotee started to cry and tell him all his troubles, how much he loved his son. And the devotee started to cry and tell him all his troubles and how much he loved his son. And then he asked Ramana, "What is God?" Ramana didn't answer. He kept still for about 15 minutes. Then he opened his eyes and he said softly, Ramana said softly, "What is God." It is like when someone asks the question, is the world real? The world by itself is an illusion, but God as the world is real. As we progress, we find that there never was a God, so there never was a world. But for the sake of talking, because God is, the universe is. Everything from the lowest microbe to the fullest galaxy is an expression of God. Everything is God. Everything is God. Every leaf, every piece of clay, every star, every planet has no basis for its existence by itself. Because God is, everything else is. That is what Ramana meant when he answered, "What is God." He was trying to explain to the devotee, your son is dying, that is God. Your son is living, that is God. There is no real difference. Only in your mind. We differentiate only in the mind. If the mind were made quiescent, quiet, there would be no differentiation between death and life. Jesus, they use the same word over and over again. We make this differentiation because we think it is the mental concept that somebody dies and that is bad, but somebody lives and that is good. There is no differentiation. There is only God. And everything that exists, everything is God. There can be no thing apart from God. But then I say that God does not exist except for in your mind. That is a reason that in reality nothing exists. Do you follow that? As long as you think there will be existence, person, place, and thing, but when you stop thinking, there is no room for existence because there cannot be the silence and existence. Everything that can appear to be opposes the silence. The silence is consciousness, absolute reality, Sat Chit Ananda. The self exists as itself. Yet when you begin to modify it, you say, well, God exists. God is the first modification of consciousness. And then it's God's job to create the world, and then to dissolve the world, and then to create the world. Who gave God that job? He didn't do it. Who did? Why would God want to create world universes and then dissolve them, and after a period of time bring them back into existence? Yet this is what we read about in all the scriptures. This information is for the jnani, for the person steeped in ignorance. You have to explain to this man how the world became existent, or he will not be satisfied. You therefore go into all the modifications. There is the self, and the self is consciousness. Consciousness modifies itself, and you have God. God modifies itself, and you have existence. Ramana realized that if he explained this to the devotee would not understand. If you told the devotee that only the self exists, God and your son did not die because he was never born, it would be too much for the devotee to comprehend. Therefore, instead, he said that God is. What is God. It made the devotee feel better, for he realized that his son was in God's hands, and all is well. But yet, if we have a questioning mind, we question, where did God come from? And why does all these things appear? What is the purpose? Most of us know that there is no purpose. But yet, if we have a questioning mind, we question, where did God come from? And why does God appear as all these things? What's the purpose? Nothing exists in the way it appears. Your real nature is pure awareness. Pure awareness is the universal. There's no place for anything else. In other words, you cannot have existence as it appears and pure awareness. Otherwise, you would have diversification, as the appearance shows you. There's a beautiful tree, there's a sky, there are flowers, there are animals, there are insects. If pure awareness or the self is self-contained, how could there be anything else? Where would there be room for everything? It's just like space. When you have a room filled with furniture, what happens to the space it takes up? And when you take the furniture out of the room, has the space changed? Nothing has happened to the space. The space is the same, whether the room is filled with furniture or not. And so it is with reality. Reality exists, the self exists as the self, but it appears as if there are things in the universe, as if there was a universe. There are people, there are animals, there are planets. There is the vegetable kingdom, the mineral kingdom. All this appears as real. Therefore, you have to ask the question, to whom does it appear? Who sees this? You know by now that it is the I. The I is the culprit. If it were not for the I, there would be no universe. There would be no God, and there would be no creation. So Ramana could not tell this to the devotee, because the devotee would not understand. He therefore said, God is. What is God is? What is God. The world appears to exist. The world by itself could never exist. So the next step is to say that God exists as the world. But I say to you, there is not God and there is no world, and nothing is as it appears. The appearance is called the false imagination. And whose fault is it? The I. Blame the I. Whenever you make a mistake, say it is the eye's fault, because there are no mistakes. It sounds funny because it's true. If you did not identify with the I, nothing would exist. Things only exist because you identify with the I. Now, the grand secret is to the following: follow the I back to the source. If you really follow the I back to the source, there is no God. Where would God come from? Even as I talk about the word God, some of you are thinking about a figure up in the sky, anthropomorphic type of deity. Who created him? It is the same old question. If God created the universe, who created God? There's no verbal answer, for it goes beyond thought. You will know the truth about this question when you are quiet, when your mind is quiet. When the mind is no longer in existence, the answer will reveal itself for you, will be the answer. Otherwise, there is no answer. But I can assure you that there's no such thing as God. There's no such thing as creation. There's no such thing as the universe. There's no such thing as the world. And there's no such thing as you. There's no such thing as I. What is left? Silence. I speak on many levels. Many jnanis did bhakti. I realize that many of you are bhaktis, and I am taking away your enjoyment, taking away your God that you worship, be it in the form of Buddha, Krishna, Jesus, Moses, whoever you like to worship. But I speak as on many levels. As far as jnani is concerned, it is virtually impossible for God to exist separate from yourself. But yet, such people as Nisargadatta, Maharaj, Bhagavan, Ramana Maharishi, and many other jnanis did bhakti. Ramana used to pray to Shiva in the form of Arunachala. Nisargadatta also prayed to Shiva. So the question is, why did they do it? And the answer is for the sake of others. To get to the stage where God does not exist for you any longer is a very high transcendent stage. I do not expect you bhaktis to give up your worship. As you know, on Sunday we have puja and we have chanting. To whom are we chanting? To Hari, to Ram, to Shiva? I must tell you again, as long as you believe you are the doer, that you are the body and the mind, do not fool yourself into thinking that you are not. For if you weren't, you would not react the way you react to situations. As long as you believe that things are real, then you have to pray to God, because God does exist for you. You can call God the law of karma. In reality, karma does not exist. Yet how many of us have such reality? Therefore, the best thing for you to do is to practice the jnani practices. But keep doing your puja. Do not give it up. If you are doing japa, whatever practice you have, keep it up. But practice self-inquiry. As you practice self-inquiry, you will notice something very interesting happening to you. You will notice that little by little you begin to give up your worship slowly but surely until a day comes when you become the object of your worship. If you have been worshiping Krishna, you will see yourself as Krishna, and so forth. If you try to act like a jnani before your time, you will have a lot of problems, for you will develop a I don't give a damn attitude. That is not what we're talking about. I will give you an idea of how a jnani acts. There was once a jnani who lived in a little shack on a mountain by himself. He was radiantly happy. He was coming back from his walk and he saw that some thieves were breaking into his house. He crept up by the window to see what they would take, and of course he owned nothing. There was just a torn blanket on the floor, so the thieves started to curse. And one said to the other, "This guy has nothing here. Let's just take the blanket and leave." So they took the blanket. The next day, he intuitively perceived that the two robbers were caught by the police. So he hurried down to the police station to see what would happen. When the sergeants saw him, they said, "Come in. Are these the men who stole from you?" And he said, "Yes." So the policeman asked, "What did they take?" And he said, "They took my hat and my shirt and my pants and my shoes." And the thieves started screaming, "What a liar this man is. He did not have anything. He just had a torn blanket." And when the sergeant said, "Is this true?" the jnani said, "When I put the blanket on my head, it becomes a hat. When I put it around my shoulders, it becomes a shirt. When I tie it around my waist, it becomes pants. And when I walk in it, it becomes my shoes." Of course, the sergeant laughed and he said, "Well, shall we press charges?" And then jnani said, "No." Then the two thieves became his disciples. The meaning of that story is, because you are a jnani, it does not mean you do not have compassion. A real jnani has more love and compassion than anybody else, but is not attached to anything, and he or she will be the first one to run to someone's aid to help somebody. It sounds like a contradiction, but it is not. For while the jnani carries a body, the body becomes under the jnani's jurisdiction and becomes an instrument for good in this world. Therefore, you can never judge a jnani, for you have no idea what a jnani is. You can see a jnani praying to God just as ardently as a bhakti, yet the jnani knows there is no God, but does it for the sake of others. So when I tell you that there is no God and there is no universe and no world and there are no people, there's only absolute reality, do not take it too seriously. See where you are coming from. Be true to yourself. Do not fool yourself. Whatever you are into, whatever you are going through, if you sit in silence and practice self-inquiry, things will begin to stir for you. Things will begin to happen. You will find that your feelings change, your reactions change, you become less selfish, you develop loving kindness, you understand what the universe is all about, and you are at peace. Student: Robert, do you think that worshiping God or believing in God impedes realization? Robert: on the contrary, worshiping God makes you pure. It makes you pure enough so that you can follow the eye back to the source. Whereas if you did not worship God, you would just know everything intellectually and you would have a hard heart. Worshiping God softens you, makes you mellow, causes you to become one-pointed, and it lifts you higher. So by all means, worship God. It is good. But what kind of God do you worship? Worshiping God in the form of Satguru or in the form of Buddha or Christ, whatever is even better. Student: why so? Robert: for if you worship God without form, the energy is not as strong. For what kind of God are you worshiping? An invisible God that has no form, no shape. Therefore, you have doubts. You are not too sure. And the energy you send out is not that strong. But when you worship God as form, you can give that God all your energy or total surrender to that particular deity. That is the purpose of worship, to finally totally surrender your ego, your pride, your body, your affairs, your life to that deity. And then you become that deity itself. Student, is it better, Robert, to focus on one form? Robert, yes, of course, for you become one pointed. It causes your mind to become one pointed. And when your mind becomes your servant and finally the mind disappears, it's like the sun. When the sun spreads its rays all over the place, it is not as powerful as if one ray of the sun moved to a certain place. A fire would start. That is how powerful it is. But when the sun dissipates its rays, they are not as powerful. In the same way, when you worship many deities, you dissipate your energy and the worship is not as powerful. Student, even if you think of them as more or less representative of the same consciousness? Robert, that is hard to do. You can't worship Buddha and Christ and Muhammad and Krishna at the same time. Student, I thought you could, in the sense of all of them all being the Christ consciousness. Robert, so how will you worship them? How will you do that? Student, as a unit. How can you do it? What will you think of? Student, the underlying consciousness that they all represent. Robert, if you can do that, that's good. That's wonderful. But I still think you'll think of each one and dissipate your energy. Whereas if you have only one, they will eventually all merge into oneness. In other words, if you worship Krishna correctly, eventually Buddha, Christ, and Shiva, everyone will become Krishna. So it is better in bringing the worship to one, when the whole universe will become that one. There was once a holy man who died and went to heaven. He approached the pearly gates and knocked. God came out and asked, "What do you want?" The holy man replied, "I am your servant. I have come." God said, "Sorry, there is no room for you here. Goodbye." God says, "Sorry, you can't come in." The holy man sat down and started to gaze in silence to ponder this. Why won't God let me in? I've been good. I've practiced the scriptures. He pondered this for 6 months. Finally, he said to himself, I've got the answer. He knocked on the door and God came to the gate. He said, "Let me in. I am your humble servant, the one who has chanted your name for centuries, who has bowed to you and who has prayed to you." God said, "I'm sorry, there's no room for you here." Again, he closed the door. This time, the holy man became completely upset. He didn't know what the problem was. He had been a good person, a holy person. Why won't that guy let me in? He said to himself. I'm going to sit here forever if I have to until I come up with the right answer. Centuries passed and he pondered. Remember, he was dead, so it didn't matter. He could stay there forever. After this very long period of pondering why he hadn't been let in, he paused and asked himself, wait a minute, who is this I that wants to go into heaven? Who is the I that chanted God's name? Who practiced the scriptures? Who am I? All of a sudden, he started laughing. The answer came. He got up and knocked on the door of heaven. God came to the door and said, Who is this? The holy man said, It is thou. God opened the gate and said, Come in, my son. There never was enough room in here for both me and you. So it is with us. We claim we want to be self-realized. We don't realize that we are already self-realized. We just have to let go of the belief that I am the doer. It makes no difference what you have done in the past. So far as self-realization is concerned, once you know the truth, you become free. The truth is there is no past. There never was a past. The universe has no foundation. There is no nothing to hold it together. Therefore, there is no thing you have done that can keep you out of heaven. This does not give you license to go out and do evil because it does not matter, not at all. As far as you are concerned, as long as you believe you are the doer, the body mind phenomena, everything you do has to be accounted for. The law of karma will get you. As long as you believe you are a human, you cannot get away with anything. As long as you believe you are a human, a personal I, then there is a personal God. This is where prayer comes in. You can pray to that God and you will be helped. Your personal God will take care of you if you surrender and submit. When you submit, you're giving up your ego. You are saying, I am nothing and you are everything. This will help you. One day, you will awaken to the fact that the God you have been praying to is none other than yourself. How can this God be separate from you? Where would he live? What would be his nature? You begin to understand that I am that. You find freedom in the self. You begin to see that God is not within me, but that I am in God. What I had called God consciousness, I am consciousness. I am aware. I exist. I am. There is nothing else. You begin to see yourself as omnipresent. You are no longer limited to your body or your personal I. Your job is to keep the mind from wandering. The mind has to be held by you. Your mind is not your friend. It makes you human. It makes you believe that you are a body separate. When you see that the body is an emanation of the mind, that it has no existence whatsoever except in your mind, you also begin to see that the body of the universe is the same as your body. It is a manifestation of the mind. This brings the beginning of freedom. Bondage begins to break up. You look at the world and realize the world is the self. I am the self. There is nothing else. I am will suffice. You have an idea of what God is. Can you imagine God having fear? Can you imagine God complaining about how things are going? Or judging this or that to be right or wrong? Or saying, I'd rather have this or that? There's no duality in God. The universe is ultimate oneness beyond concepts. The mind cannot comprehend it. Even if the word God comes after I am, your mind is playing tricks. Ask, to whom does the word God come? I am will suffice. That is all you have to be. I am. Everything else is superfluous. Whatever idea comes into your mind, inquire as to whom it comes. Listen to the silence. Listen to the I am. Student, can I remember what you have said? Robert, there is something within you that remembers. Something within you knows. If you sit still, put a smile on your face, these things will come forth. That is the interesting question. A sincere student has an open heart, and the highest truth is revealed. My words may sometimes not even be remembered by the brain, but the heart never forgets. And when you rest in the silence, you sit still, you remain quiet. Something begins to work within your heart as you become a living embodiment of the reality, of the truth, of the self. Always spend time by yourself, sitting alone in silence, being quiet. Student, many years ago when I was working I seem to have spent a whole day with my inquiry. One day, I just did, and I didn't do anything with what I did. In spite of myself, everything that would have been a problem resolved all the way home this way. And when I got home, I thought I would lie down for a moment, and I did. I turned around, and that blazing attribute through strength of intensity, the totality of it, absolutely frightened me. And I turned right back. And I think I was probably not ready for it. Robert, you have nothing to do with it, and you have nothing to say about it. When it happened to you, it will happen totally and completely. You get a glimpse of it. Apparently, you got a good glimpse of it, but who are you to say that you're not ready for that? Student, well, because I turned around the other way. Robert, you speak as if you are an authority on God, that you have something to do with it. When God is ready for you, God will take you over completely, and you will have absolutely nothing to say about it whatsoever. But that was a good experience. It it if it happens again, surrender to it. Surrender totally to it, and have no fear. That's beautiful. Nothing can even hurt you. That's all bliss. It's all love. It's all joy. Student, that's what I meant by, can I really remember this? Robert, it will remember you. Student, it will remember me. I had nothing to do with it. Robert, no. Student, when you die, what happens? Robert, when you die, what happens? What do you want to happen? Who dies? The ego dies. The body dies, but you never die. You will live forever. Nothing really happens. I know you have heard all kinds of stories about going to different realms and planes of existence. This is all part of the dream. You create these things for yourself. You create all these different planes, the subtle plane, the mental plane, the casual plane. All these things you read about in the yoga texts are of the mind. They all belong to the mind. So you believe in these things. You go according to what you believe. It's all created by you. You create your world after you die. But the ultimate reality is no one ever dies, and there is nowhere to go. You are already here. This is it. You are in eternity. You are fathomless space. You are the essence of the whole universe. You are the sky, the sun, the moon, the flowers, the animals, the insects, human beings. You're everything. This is your real nature. No one dies. Student, when our lady friend said she had this experience, then she turned back or couldn't handle it. Does that mean the mind just can't handle all this kind of new energy or a new perception? The mind can't handle it, so the mind has to be coaxed slowly into accepting reality? Robert, no, on the contrary. All these experiences come from the mind. Reality is reality, and this is your very nature right now. So what is there that can't handle reality? Since it is its own nature, this is what you really are. The thing you are dealing with is the mind. The mind takes all these experiences up and makes you believe you can't handle it. It's too much for you. This is why work on destroying the mind and inquiry to whom the mind comes. Who is this mind? What is this mind? Where did it come from? Who gave it birth? And you'll experience there is no mind. Once you know there is no mind, there's no longer the experience you've got to go through. All experiences cease, but be aware that all experiences have come from the mind. In reality, there are no experiences. The life you're living now is an experience. The false life we all live, this is the experience I am talking about. It is all of the mind. And the average person believes in the mind so strongly that when they seem to drop the body, they go forward into a plane of existence that they have created for themselves out of the mind. And then when they come back and take on another body, it is all from the mind. So rather than go through all these things, transcend the mind and be free. Student, how long does it take to get another body? Is that a stupid question? How long does one after they die get another body? Robert, why worry about this? Why be concerned about another body? There are no bodies. Try to find out who you really are, that you never were a body to begin with, and be free.